Hello, it's your boy, back with another unboxing. So many new smartphones this month. Thank God for single malt whiskey is all I can say. But today we're going to be taking a full-on tour of the Poco X3 Pro. Now, fans of the channel may remember I banged on quite a lot about the Poco X3 NFC last year because it was one of the best budget smartphones of 2020, though it has since been superseded by the likes of Xiaomi's Redmi Note 10 Pro. So that's where the Poco X3 Pro comes in. Basically boasts a lot of the same specs and features, but gives the performance a good old kick up the arse to make it a contender once again. So I'm going to whip the Poco X3 Pro out of its box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, and for more on the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Welcome to the Poco family. Thank you for choosing Poco. Oh god, they've actually used the word onboarded as well. Ugh. That's almost as bad as reaching out. Everyone seems to be reaching out to each other in emails these days. Bunch of pervs. Anywho, in this lovely yellow box, you've got one Poco X3 Pro. You've got a whole bunch of Poco stickers, so you can wear those and make it abundantly clear what your smartphone of choice is. Thankfully, none of them say I've onboarded with Poco. Good to see you've got a good bit of condom case action bundled in there to wrap around your Poco X3 Pro and keep it protected. Hold on to your pants because it's a highly exciting Type-C USB cable and a big old chunky adapter as well. And that's it for the box, and now it's time to check out the Poco X3 Pro. Now, first up, the Poco X3 Pro is proper hefty at 215 grams, making it just as heavy as quite a lot of the meatiest flagships out there. You've got a Gorilla Glass 6 front end, which is an upgrade over the original NFC, which was Gorilla Glass 5. You've also got a pre-installed screen protector for a bit of extra cover there, and flip it around and it is just your basic budget plastic arse. You can grab the Poco X3 Pro in 3 different colors. This is the Frost Blue model, but you can also grab it in Phantom Black and Metal Bronze. Guessing it was probably quite late in the day when they were coming up with the names for those colors, and by the time they got the third one they were just like, Metal Bronze, yeah, f it, that'll do. The more eagle-eyed among you may have noticed there is a subtle bit of Poco branding on the back end there, not quite as bad as some previous efforts to be fair. Gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan of the design on here. It does look quite budgety, nothing particularly thrilling at all. You've got kind of a two-tone effect because you've got like 2 matte strips down at the edges and then it is sort of glossy in the middle. It does seem to be picking up a few little greasy prints here and there. Noteworthy design features include an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor, and down below you've got that fan favourite, the headphone jack. Let's just quickly see what the SIM tray situation is. And it's fairly standard stuff. You've got space for 2 SIMs in there, otherwise that second slot can be used for micro SD memory cards instead. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly set up the Poco X3 Pro and then we'll tour the rest of the software and the hardware. Alright, Poco X3 Pro is all set up, ready for action. What you get here is the latest, freshest Android 11 with a bit of Poco Launcher action as well. Looks mostly like stock Android until you sort of dive into the settings. And that's where you start to see the MiUI style vibes here. You've got tons of bonus features crammed in there on top of Android. So some of those fresh new features like the control center, which was basically ripped straight off of iOS. And you know what? I'm absolutely fine with that because it is really, really good. It gives you fast access to all of your smart home goodies and absolutely tons of toggles as well, all with a single swipe, so that is definitely nifty. And as usual, quick and easy customizations. You can mess around with the grids, the icon packs, all that good stuff. And all my favourite bonus features like Game Turbo and Video Toolbox are present and correct. Video Toolbox is particularly great if you're watching something on YouTube, like a podcast or something where you don't really need the video, you just want the audio, you're going to be going out and about, you want to turn off the screen but keep on listening, just tap this. Wait for the little annoying countdown thing to finish and then hit OK, and then as you can see the screen is off but the audio is still going. Unfortunately, you do get the occasional ad popping up here on the Poco Launcher, which is a much maligned thing in MiUI. To be fair, in Xiaomi's more premium smartphones, I haven't really seen it happen, but it definitely happens here on the Poco X3 Pro. Quite rarely though, usually only when you're installing a new app. And occasionally you might get one while using one of Xiaomi's own ads as well, though touch wood, I haven't seen that so far here on the Poco X3 Pro. I know people occasionally suspect that this is an ad, but it's actually just shortcuts to all of the various features that you've got here on the Poco X3 Pro. But sweet baby tap dancing Jesus, you get a lot of crapware pre-installed here on the Poco X3 Pro. Lots of apps like TikTok, PUBG Mobile actually came pre-installed. Bloody LinkedIn, they are paying a lot of people to put this bloody app on their bloody phones. Uninstall, off your f***. I love the almost celebratory fanfare that happens when you get rid of one of these crappy apps. Now for your security needs, as I mentioned earlier, you do have that edge-mounted fingerprint sensor, and so far seems nice and nippy and responsive. Just basically tap your finger against the scanner, you don't even need to push in the button, and as you can see, it's just straight in there. And you've got a good bit of face recognition as well, so if I just use a finger I haven't registered, And as you can see, once again, just basically scans your mug and you're straight in there. There's absolutely no hanging about. As for the storage options here on the Poco X3 Pro, you've got either 128 or 256 gigs, depending on how much cash you throw at Poco. And it's UFS 3.1 as well, which is great to see, so nice and nippy. As for that screen, well, it's basically the same 6.67-inch IPS display you found on the Poco X3 NFC. Pro model once again has a Full HD Plus resolution, reasonably sort of crisp, although obviously because it's such a big panel, once you look a bit closer you'll notice that the finer detail is missing in some of your photos and your high-res movies. You've also apparently got HDR10 support here on the Poco X3 Pro, but unfortunately, the likes of Netflix, you can't stream HDR content yet. Hopefully that will come in a future update. And colours are sort of reasonably punchy on the saturated display setting, but you can just leave it on the auto and it will adjust the colour, temperature and everything based on your environmental surroundings. Good wide viewing angles here on the Pro though, and you've only got a dinky little selfie orifice poking its way and intruding on the scene when you are watching something back full screen. As far as the brightness level goes, it's not the brightest panel around, but should just about do you outdoors as long as it's not too sunny. And once again, the Poco X3 Pro, like the Poco X3 NFC before it, sports a 120Hz refresh rate. It's actually set to 60 by default, so you just have to nudge it up if you want that silky smooth finish. So let's have a shift here at the audio, and it's a stereo speaker setup here on the Poco X3 Pro, which is great to see. Let's just bump up the volume though and make sure it doesn't suck. There's a bit of plastic banding around the edges as well. You do actually get a headphone jack down below, which is something you don't get in those more premium Samsung. And yeah, I'm happy with that output. Certainly that top speaker more than pulls its weight. You know, it's not quite as strong as that bottom speaker, but it's certainly not a tinny waste of space. Decent clarity on that top volume as well. Should be having no problem, you know, watching a bit of YouTube, Netflix or whatever in a fairly noisy environment. And as well as that headphone jack, of course, you've got full Bluetooth 5 support as well, support for high-res audio, all that good stuff. But the big new upgrade here on the Poco X3 Pro over that older NFC is the Snapdragon 860 chops that's packed inside. Fresh rejiggered version of that excellent Snapdragon 865 chipset, which powered a lot of last year's flagship phones. You've got a choice of either 6 or 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM here on the Poco X3 Pro. This is just the 6 gig model, but absolutely no worries whatsoever. Apps have just been loading up straight away and running absolutely impeccably. Haven't noticed a single bit of slowdown at all. Of course, like the standard 865 from last year, the 860 does not come with a built-in 5G modem, and Poco hasn't shoved one in there either, so it is LTE connectivity all the way. If that's going to bother you, then you might want to get something like the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite instead, which offers 5G on a budget. But right now, let's check out the gaming chops of the Poco X3 Pro with a good bit of Call of Duty action. And as with all MiUI devices, you've got that excellent Game Turbo menu which you can just drag onto the screen. This offers all kinds of bonus little shortcut features, including notifications blocking. You can open up other apps in a dinky little window as you're playing, so that's quite handy if you want to watch a YouTube walkthrough or just check your messages while you're gaming. Make sure the boss man isn't getting on your grill. It's good news for gamers because I had absolutely zero issues running Call of Duty Mobile on those top detail settings with the fastest possible frame rate as well. You got that Adreno 640 GPU that deals with all that shenanigans, no worries. The display supports 240Hz touch sampling, so I certainly found it responsive enough. It's a completely flat panel as well, so that definitely helps. And even if you're going to be playing for a while, no worries there, because you've got that liquid cool tech, which is basically a bit of copper heat pipe partnered up with some sexy graphite layer action. There's bugger all difference when it comes to the battery though. The Poco X3 Pro sports once again a 5160 mAh cell, just like that Poco X3 NFC, with that 33 watt fast charge. And that battery should keep you going all day long, no worries, even if you're absolutely mauling the shit out of this thing. So last up for this fun and exciting Poco X3 Pro unboxing and tour, let's check out that quad lens array camera tech. Now, primary shooter is a 48 megapixel effort, but as with pretty much all smartphone shooters these days, it uses 4-in-1 pixel binning, so what you actually end up with is a 12 megapixel image. And as you can probably tell by the fact that that's a really blurry shot, my hand was trembling a little bit, there's no optical image stabilization built into that primary camera lens. One more time, keeping this still as humanly possible. That's a bit better. Now you've got all the usual camera features on here. You've got a bit of HDR action, which is set to auto by default. You've got that AI mode as well, which can just help to analyze your scene and suggest particular modes. So for instance, if it detects a face, you'll see there it'll swap to a good bit of portrait action. As well as that 48 megapixel primary shooter, you've also got an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, which I'm not expecting great things from. I'm sure, you know, the color accuracy tends to suffer a bit. It'll probably be quite low detailed snaps. I know there's most certainly no telephoto lens on here, so that is just a 2x digital zoom. The other two lenses are a basic 2 megapixel depth sensor for your portrait shots and a 2 megapixel macro lens if that's your kind of thing. And if you're a fan of bonus camera modes, then oh boy, you're going to be a happy camper, because look at all the bonus crap you get shoved on here. You've got a 48 megapixel mode if you do want to snap at that maximum resolution. You've got a night mode, which usually comes in quite handy in those low light conditions, could just brighten things up a bit of long exposure if you've got a tripod or something handy. And you do have full pro controls as well if you want to mess around with the likes of the shutter speed, the focus, the white balance. And that can once again take shots at 48 megapixels if you like. And if you're shooting a whole movie or two, well, it's done at full HD resolution, 30 frames per second by default, but you can bump that up to 60 FPS or even all the way up to 4K at 30 FPS. And you do have Xiaomi's track, move and object feature as well, which is quite handy if you've got a hyperactive kid or whatever, but as you can see there, that only works at full HD at 30 FPS. And last up, for the Poco X3 Pro's many camera lenses, you've got a 20 megapixel selfie shooter, which comes with the usual AI magic. You've got your beautify action. I can slender myself, I can make my eyes massive, sort out my ridiculously big nose, maybe give myself a hero chin, bump up the chin, bump up the lips. Oh, I'm gonna get straight on Tinder with that. I don't know about you, but I certainly would. And there she blows, the Poco X3 Pro in a nutshell. And it's great to see you got that Snapdragon 860 chipset in there, which seems to handle everything absolutely fine with gusto. It's a shame you haven't got any 5G support in there to compete with Xiaomi's own Mi 10T Lite as well, but you know what, if you just want a fast performance smartphone that bought some pretty strong specs and solid battery life as well, then basically job done. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts down below. I've also been spending some time with the Poco F3, which I've actually had my SIM slipped inside, so my full review of that should be going live around the same sort of time as this unboxing, so go check that out. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. Cheers everyone, love you.